Hey folks, Jennifer Garstang here. Sorry for the long hiatus. I was traveling abroad and came back. Well, I came back a couple weeks ago, and it's just been a little crazy trying to get back into the swing of things. Um, so today, you may notice that this picture is different than the one that I've been working on for the past 10 live streams. And we're just gonna today take a break from the other picture I've been working on to revisit because I really need to actually finish a painting or two. So a lot of times what I'll end up doing is I'll start a painting, I'll work on it for a while, get it to a certain point, and then I kind of get stuck a little bit, and then I'll set it aside and I'll start on another painting, work on that for a while, set that aside, then start on another one, and eventually I circle back to the original, work on it some more, maybe finish it, maybe don't, then, keep doing that cycle until I actually complete a painting, and usually I finish, sometimes I can finish several in a very, very close together, but I've just found that's the best way that's just sort of my workflow. It's it's not the best way to do things. I don't think it would be much better if I could just start a painting, finish a painting, but that's not how my brain is willing to work. So this is a sweet little piece, a little fantasy piece that I've been working on for quite a while. You can see it's sort of a concept of a couple characters that I have a few paintings actually planned for them, the wizard and his dragon. I don't have names for them yet, but I really like them. So just kind of I really enjoy kind of getting behind the scenes in fantasy, of thinking about little fun, whimsical kind of background. Oh, come on, music. Don't do this to me. Be nice and quiet. There we go. Sorry, minor adjustments. It's been a while. Everything's reset itself. So, rather than showing the glorious, knights in battle and wizards on it, I mean, I do some of that stuff too. I enjoy that as well. But I really enjoy sort of, well, what would happen with a wizard in the back room washing dishes and washing out his cauldron. So, this piece is very, very close to done. I would say it's probably a couple weeks away from being complete. There's just, it looks pretty finished. It's just there's a lot of little details to go over and finalize. I think I'm actually gonna put some. I kind of like the idea of putting gloves on the wizard. I feel like now that I've gotten all this oily looking stuff that's causing whatever this chemical reaction is with the dish soap, I don't think it's a good idea for him not to have gloves on. So I'm thinking some purple latex gloves might be entertaining for him to be wearing. And just, going over and polishing, making all the bubbles look more like this bubble and in terms of how finalized they are. And you can see there's some sketchy stuff in the background. I'm going to expand some of the background over here. Just a lot of little things to do. For the past few weeks, I've done a ton of work on this section here. With the tub, I think is really pretty much done. The bucket, the water pump, and of course this marble countertop, which I'm very proud of how that texture turned out. So I'm going to be doing a lot of that same stuff here that I did to these guys to sort of help finalize it. And a lot of that involves going back over with the pen tool. You can see I have this very crisp line here that I've been working on the cauldron of, doing the edges. I've separated out the layers. What was originally all one thing, I went through with a pen tool and kind of separated them out so that I could more effectively work individually with areas and get that final polish. And yeah, so now I'm just going to kind of, I think I'm going to delve in. I think I'm going to put some gloves on the wizard today. We're going to get started with that. First I'm going to turn off the bubbles so that they are not in the way. I'm going to look up some picture of purple glove, cleaning gloves. really want those oversized rubber gloves that we see. Alright. So, because I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna like this, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like this, but I'm not entirely sure I'm gonna like this. So I'm gonna find... Okay. The wizard's arms are a separate layer. There they are. And I'm actually going to duplicate this layer. So I got arms copy 2. And this is what I'm going to use. This is where I'm going to add the gloves. So if I don't like it, I can always go back to the way it was before. And we're going to go ahead and grab some purple. I'm just going to kind of start make it a little brighter so I can really see what I'm doing here. Still have the rag. There we go. Starting to go around, and so the gloves are going to have a larger profile than the hands would, because it fits over the hand. So I'm kind of I'm just going to kind of fill that in with some nice base of purple. This nice bright purple color. I don't know, it's just entertaining to me, the idea of a super powerful wizard wearing gloves. Wearing these latex gloves and scrubbing his cauldron with the dragon on his head. That image kind of tickles me. And that is part of what's happening at this phase in this painting. You know, I've gotten all of the basics down. And as I'm creating it, like, little details of the world start kind of presenting themselves to me. You know, little ideas of, oh, well, what if he was wearing gloves? What if I thought about what's causing the chemical reaction? What's causing these giant bubbles that are floating out? Well, what if it's the dish soap interacting with whatever's left in the cauldron, is creating these massive bubbles? So those are all going to be fun colors and, you know, floating out, and you can see the reaction starting to happen here, and I definitely have more detail to put in there. And then just kind of thinking through, all right, what little details will add to this? It's kind of, if you look at my piece Misunderstanding, in fact, I'll bring that up shortly once I finish putting these gloves over his hands. Again, a larger profile in the fingers themselves. To be fair, I'm also cheating a little bit because I wasn't really happy with how his hands were looking. They were a little, I don't know, it just wasn't working for me the way his hands were looking. So now I don't have to figure out how to get the old man hands exactly right. But I think part of the reason it wasn't working for me was he needed gloves. I love that. I mean, maybe it doesn't really, it's not very clear yet what's going to happen with it, but I really enjoy that. I can see where it's going. Anyway, taking just a brief moment, and I'm going to bring up another piece that this is similar to. And that is Misunderstanding. And what you could see is there's just, as I was creating this piece, there were a lot of little details that came to mind. You know, the blood on the sash that she's using to tie off the cut on the hand, the tear, the smoke. A lot of the details on the knight were especially kind of late additions. So you've got the smoke coming off of the feather, you've got the blood on the sword, you've got especially this little decoration on the shield so you can see what he was all about, and the tip of the cape. So all of those things kind of come in a lot of those ideas often happen later in the process once I kind of have the basics down. I see the characters, I have the concept, and then I just get more ideas for little touches that can make it more fun and more of a rich experience to look at. And let's see. So now I'm going to start going over here, and we're going to take, let's start with some lowlights. So we're going to take a darker purple there and start kind of going over. So a lot of these, they have like a fold. So we're going to go over that fold. I'm going to start marking out some of the wrinkles in the latex, and it's going to have those wrinkles. I'm just looking at a picture of hands wearing these things and the way they kind of crinkle. Whoops. No, thanks for the help. I don't need that. My computer sometimes likes to help me paint when I pop out of a window. Sometimes just likes to put a few marks down that I didn't intend. All right. So we got kind of figuring out how the latex now is gonna move. Find where the fingers are. And they all have this kind of like dimple thing going on, where it's kind of folding as it curves with the hand. Got sort of a lot of this nice shape to it. On the top, how it curves. It's kind of got some of those. Let me do some on the bottom there. There we go. So we got kind of the initial layers down. And I'm debating if maybe the rag itself should be a sponge. Don't know. I'll revisit that shortly. So now I'm going to go with a lighter purple. We're going to desaturate it a little since it doesn't need to be that bright of a purple. I'm going to lower the opacity, give myself a little bit of a little wiggle room. And then we're just going to kind of go around to show where it's higher and lower. So what we're doing essentially is kind of mapping out the shapes. You know, the human eye and our brain, you know, the way we see 3 dimensions is our brains pick up on where the light is hitting, what's the highlights, what's the lowlights. Lowlights are the dips, and highlights tend to be the higher points, hence, you know, I think maybe that's why they're called highlights. I don't know. And so that we can use that, our brain's interpretation, to create, you know, the illusion of 3 dimensions. And that's what we're doing here. We're coming through. It's kind of like what I did with what I was doing when I talked about when I was doing the sand on the other piece that I've been working on this live stream. Where we're creating the illusion of depth using the lights and the darks, and we can't just kind of it can't be entirely haphazard in terms of what you know, where we're putting the highlights, where we're putting the lowlights, because they're actually very important to creating that depth, and they're also important to creating the texture. The texture of the material is often indicated, or is usually indicated, by those highlights and lowlights. So the shape of them mainly, so the fact that we have these sort of, it's kind of a smooth material, so we have these kind of smoother lines. We have the way it kind of folds and creates curves rather than abrupt deep lines, and it's not hard, you know, it's got these folds to it, so it's not going to be uniform throughout the whole thing. You're going to have kind of the fabric bending over the hand, you know, around the underlying shape. And that indicates to the brain and the brains of viewers that we're dealing with sort of a loose, rubbery substance. So, kind of got the basics down here. Back up a little bit. And I'm thinking I'm gonna push this sleeve back somewhat. Because I kind of liked originally having them, well, I kind of liked it and I kind of didn't like it. Having the sleeves uneven is kind of bugging me, that you got you can see the arm on this one, but you can't on this one, and I know that that's kind of natural, but it really makes the proportions look a little off to me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna merge these two, and I'll get to, you'll see why those two essentially identical layers were why I had two of them in a little bit. I'll get into that later. My goodness, sorry, I'm talking all over the place today. My brain is, I think, still in Canada. Even though I've been back for 2 weeks. Alright, so we're going to use the liquefy tool. And again, this takes a lot more processing power than the smudge tool. But it creates, it's more, it doesn't smudge things the same way. So it keeps the sharpness, it moves things around without messing them up. And at this point in the process, even though that takes longer, that's what we need. So I'm going to essentially push this back up here and just kind of move the whole thing upward. Because it's kind of coming out and around. There we go. Alright, let's see how that renders. This is going... Oh, I almost said this is going shockingly fast, so I obviously jinxed myself. The hurry up and wait part of the process. And this is something, again, down the road, as I become more practiced, I will hopefully have to do less of this kind of manipulation toward the end of a piece, because I'll have all of that earlier on. I'll be able to kind of get those proportions and get the angles right before I'm adding all the color, before I've got all of this detail work done. And so I won't have to use the liquefy tool to smudge things around. That's the idea in principle anyway. Whether it's ever actually gonna get that way, I don't know. I'm always learning. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always practicing things that I'm not as strong at. So it will get better, but it remains to be seen whether it's just my brain doesn't, it rebels against working that way, or whether it's just a lack of practice, or maybe a combination of both. Alright, there we go. So now I've moved the arm up a little bit. And we're gonna go ahead. Sorry, I'm drinking a little water while I talk. I am parched. And now, fortunately, I made this copy of the arms. And so I can take this, and now I can do liquefy here. And we're going to show the backdrop. There we go. I'm going to zoom in on this. Doop-a-doop-a-doo-doo-doo. In we go. There we are. And now we're just gonna kind of use the liquefy tool. Maybe. Are you gonna work with me here, liquefy? What's going on? Okay, so it's not gonna let me see what I'm doing. That's fine. We're just gonna kind of expand that back a little bit. Okay, that ought to do it. Little overdid it, but that's okay. Alright. So now we're just gonna kind of go in and oops. Come back. There we go. I actually like how far the arm is coming, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the wizard's sleeve. And we're just going to play with that a little bit more. Alright. We're going to use what's called the warp tool. And this is a nifty little tool, especially if you're looking to make like ballooning edges and things of that nature. You can, as you can see, it gives you a few points that you can manipulate around and move around. So we're going to just do that. Make that all line up. I'm going to make the bottom a little droopier. I'll have to add a little more onto that. I'm going to make that line up nicely. There we go. Kind of want to get where so the elbow would come about to here, and then it's going to go up from there. I'm actually going to probably, the shoulder would probably come more like this, so. Alright, that should be enough for now of that. Alright. So, we're going to go ahead and now I am going to use the smudge tool. Just to kind of get some of this detail work in there. And make it fit properly with the arm. The arm's going to need a little bit more because it's too hard of an edge right now, so we'll have to fix that a little bit. Here we go. And I'm just going to kind of move that in a little more. Still not looking quite right to me, but we're getting closer. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit down here to the sleeve. And the arm. Maybe the arm needs to be adjusted a little bit too. Coming out a little bit lower. There we go. All right. No, that's not looking better to me. I think we just need to let's try darkening this a little bit here. It's a little more in the shadow of the, like it's emerging on the sleeve rather than just kind of pasted on top of it. Maybe I think the sleeve's a little too bright too. It's part of what's making it look odd. Oh shoot, I'm dumb. This is the part where I operate in the wrong layer and have to erase what I just did because I'm a doofus. There we go. Where are you? There he is. Okay, so let's make the changes that I was trying to make in the proper layer, and now it should actually work. There we go. So what I'm trying to do right now is make the lighting fall in such a way that the sleeves are roughly equivalent in their poofiness. Obviously they don't need to match exactly because they're two different sleeves, but they are supposed to be two sleeves on a robe that is presumably reasonably well made and has roughly equivalent size sleeves. So, gotta make sure that looks proper. What is that dot there? That's just on my computer screen. Alright. So now, yeah, that's looking better to me. I think we may need more of an elbow bend. Is that better? Let's see. Yeah, I think I like that better. The angles are probably more right. And then the arm can come down a little more here. Oops. Just the one, not the other. Alright. I think I like that better. Okay. And then we just need to bring over the glove a little bit. There. All right. this glove looks significantly off compared to the other glove. So we're gonna go ahead and bring that, make that a little bit longer. So the sizes are roughly equivalent. There we go. Why is it a pencil? I don't want a pencil, I want the brush. There we go. There we are. We want normal here. Kind of figuring out where the light, since the light is coming down from here, so the light's gonna hit. We have this a little more. Got kind of this sort of look here. Got the nice thumb divot there. Kind of define the line of the hand over here. Light's gonna hit here a little bit more than the other spots. We'll add a little depth to that shadow. There we go. All right, so these aren't bling, so we don't have a little, I don't want a flare, I want it to look folded over. Like there's a certain type of glove that is for heavy duty stuff like this that folds over to help catch any extra stuff that might wanna get in there. Yeah, I like these gloves. I like that the wizard is wearing gloves. That tickles me. Alright, we are going to desaturate these a little though, because we don't want them to stand out more than the wizard himself. There we go. Alright, I'm going to come in with the mixer brush now. We're going to just start smoothing this stuff out more. Let's see. Smoothing the edges. Make it that nice. You got that nice smooth rubber. Up in the folds of the fingers. Here. Round. clusters around the wrist where there's a bend. And a lot of it's just kind of feeling it out, you know, seeing what looks right, backing up, seeing what feels right. Especially when it comes to this, you want to introduce a little randomness into it because, well, it's not like the folds are pre-planned. Folds in the gloves are gonna fall where they fall. It's interesting to think about the complex physics that go into determining every single fold in the gloves. You know, there's a series of steps that get taken to lead it to be exactly in, you know, any given moment. The exact folds of that glove are determined by how, you know, how you pulled it on, the movements that your hand has made before, like if there's any imperfections in the material, if there's just so many factors that go into making this what looks like a completely random pattern, but it's determined by all the factors. I would bet you could simulate it. You know, you could calculate if you cared enough to and had a powerful enough computer. You know, you could figure out exactly. I mean, I guess people do that. That's what 3D textures are, and in like video games and stuff. You know, to figure out where every hair is gonna fall and every, you know, moment. You just have this whole series of events, an algorithm based on what the texture of the material is and the molecules that make up that material and how they would move. And then the stimuli that they're responding to. But I don't have all that, so I'm just kind of winging it. Mix a brush in there again. One thing I'm thinking I might do is add a plastic wrap filter. Let's see how that looks. Much lower highlight strength. This isn't shiny material, so we don't want to overdo the shimmer. And notice I don't want to have, I'm kind of smoothing out, there was a little bit too much detail on the folds. This isn't fabric, this is a thicker material, so it's gonna fall smoother than, say, a thin cloth. So you're not gonna have lots of little folds and pleats and things like that. It's gonna just kind of sit smoother. It's gonna behave itself a little more. Do the burn tool, get some more shadow in there. I'm going to do it on the shadows first. And then we're going to do highlights and bring up the highlights more. Then we're going to, that's too much. Then we're going to do, let's do midtones. Those midtones instead. There. Just a touch more desaturation. It's too much. There we go. So I'm not liking where that's falling. It wouldn't be folding that much there, so I'm going to get rid of that. Back into the zigzaggy action that goes on in the fingers. So I'm using the smudge tool right now to add this sort of zigzaggy patterns that they fall in, that the material falls into. And it has the advantage of it kind of blends stuff together. That's the key difference between the liquify and the smudge tool. Is the smudge tool, you can do, you have blending that that happens. Blending and blurring. Go. The fingers themselves are kind of smoother though. shadow here is just a little too dark. It doesn't need to be quite that dark to get the point across. There we go. Alright, I'm liking how that one's looking. We're gonna come over here and start working on this side. Again, it doesn't need quite that level. I'm actually going to erase everything but the gloves. Some of that out. So I'm just kind of recreating on this side what I just did on the other side. Kind of back out a little and see how that's looking. Liking it so far. Alright, so again I'm going to start coming in with the highlights and the lowlights. Start getting some of that patterning in. I'm noticing kind of the way the knuckles fold on this. Like that. And then you got kind of the highlights on the knuckles themselves. You got this sort of fun highlight around the wrist where there's a little slight bend. Nice broad highlights in there. going back and using the smudge tool here, as you can see. Go. Back in with that burn tool. Get some of that zigzag pattern added in there. But not too much, because that would make it not have the nice smooth latex look that we're going for. There we go. Yeah, I'm liking how these are looking. Go back over this one a little more. Reduce some of those highlights. Because again, we don't want it to look super shiny. The brighter the highlights, the brighter and more defined the highlights, the shinier the material looks. So we don't want it to look like it's super shiny. We want it to be rubbery, you know, matte rubber. Alright. So now, do a thing here. I feel like it's a little, this one got it a little too dark right over there. That part would be smoother. Not right around the wrist, so. So now that I've kind of got the basic shape the way I like them, and I'm kind of pleased with how the folds are looking. First of all, I need to desaturate this a little bit more. Just a tad. There, now it matches. And I'm going to do... I don't quite like it. It's a little too purple. So we're going to do a photo filter. Do a little bit of a warming filter on there. I like it at 30%. I'm actually going to turn off preserve luminosity too. I like that better. Normally I don't turn that off. Then I'm going to do... Well, first I'm going to save. And then we're going to, once that's done, figuring out that it wants to save. I've got a lot of layers in this, and this is what starts happening down the road once the piece is closer and I have a lot of different layers and it's very high resolution. It takes a while to save and do every sort of step in the adjustment tweaking process. So now we're going to do curves, and curves is adjusting essentially highlights and shadows. So let's try increasing the contrast. What about just doing darker? I don't like dark. I definitely like... getting them... Because what we're going for here is making the shadows and highlights in the gloves match the shadows and highlights in the rest of him. Because what... Right now, if you look at them, they look flatter, and that makes them kind of pull attention. So they're just sort of almost a flat blob of color, which makes them stand out more than we want them to. So by increasing the contrast, yeah, I think I'm just gonna do that. Now we have them fitting in, and then we're gonna see, we're going to do saturation and hue. We're going to reduce the saturation a bit. And now he's got some nice worn out looking purple gloves that don't draw attention away from what's important. They add, they don't detract. Now we'll do, let's see, obviously I missed a little bit on the arm over here. Rid of that. And then now we can look at this, and we're going to need to go back in and do a few things. Like, for instance, now that I'm looking at the darker shadows, it's a little too flat looking here. It looks like his arm's almost flattened. So we're going to come in with the mixer brush, and we're just going to expand that arm a little. And we want to make it look like it's kind of resting on the cauldron edge. So we're gonna kind of extend this and make it kind of press into the cauldron a little bit, mimic the shape of the cauldron. Kind of get some of that there. It should still be fairly smooth. This darker color, because we still want it to be nice and dark down here, and it's still too bright. I think we'd have a little bit of a wrinkle here. probably be a little bit of a fold here because of its being the way the fabric would all be pushed up together. There we go. And that's gonna get cut off at the base there. Gonna make this all drop down a little further there. There we go. Come back in with the burn tool and get those shadows darker again. There we go. Alrighty. Well, I think that is where I'm going to leave it for now. I'll be coming back. I'm sure I'll be revisiting this, these gloves a little bit more next time. So, but for now, we've got the basics down. I think I like that a lot. I think that was needed. That was definitely, I like this addition of the cleaning gloves as opposed to the arms. It also has an advantage of it kind of darkens the arms a little bit because I want the focus to be on the drag. This is the crux of the image right here, the dragon and the wizard's face. So having the arms be as bright as that, it's not bad, but I think I like that the focus is now pulled a little more up here. I'm probably gonna lighten up the purple gloves a little bit more so they stand out more, but I'll revisit it tomorrow and see how I feel. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time, much sooner, hopefully, than the gap that we had last time. So, thanks again.